Welcome, everybody, and good Shabbat. Today, we're going to study a specific message from Mar Yeshua, the Master Jesus. And many of us have heard, even people that aren't necessarily practicing Christians, even people from other religions, have heard the famous phrase rendered in English of Mar Yeshua, love your enemies. The term love in love your enemies is Hesed, your enemies. Have covenantal love for your enemies. Many people have problems with this saying of Mar Yeshua because they don't understand the Hebrew Aramaic word Hesed. And that's our goal, is to understand the term Hesed. It's also one of the Sephirot in the Kabbalistic tree. It's considered to be a name of God, so to speak, and also part of the way of God. So this is a major teaching of Mar Yeshua, and he expresses it in many ways that I'm not going to cover today. But anytime that he says to love others, he's speaking of what's called covenantal love, Hesed. In many Kabbalistic texts will interpret Hesed to be mercy, which is not inaccurate. It's just not a full description of what the pre-Kabbalistic teachings of Mar Yeshua would have been. It's specifically love linked to the Torah, covenantal love. Let's explore it some more. So let's look at a few of these verses from Mar Yeshua. They're all pretty famous. So love those that hate you. A lot of people can't imagine that. When somebody treats us bad, it's very difficult to think about loving them because we think about loving our mother, loving our father, loving our family, loving our children, loving our friends, loving our pets. There's a deep emotional connection for many of us in these varied relationships. And it's a very soft, tender, emotional, intimate type of love. And when Mar Yeshua is said to have declared, love your enemies, that kind of takes a lot of people back because it doesn't seem logical. And that's because the English translation isn't logical and it isn't fully correct. So we need to understand what Jesus was really saying if we want to live and embody his teachings, if we want to apply those teachings so that we can become perfected, illumined Baranash. So here we are. Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 28. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. Very famous saying, love your enemies. The word love, if you roll it back to the Hebrew Aramaic root, is hesed, which again we've already said can mean mercy. In our tradition, we call it covenantal love. So we could reread it. But I say to you that listen, have covenantal love for your enemies. And then he tells us how to do that. How do you have covenantal love for your enemies? Because you do good to those that hate you. You bless those that curse you. You pray for those who abuse you. So for those that are difficult to you, for example, there are many different kinds of issues going on in the world. But if you're part of a group that is suppressed or harmed in some way, do good for those that are against you. Support them. Even at work, there's always traditionally that one person that pushes your buttons, right? That person doesn't exactly like you. So they're always pushing your buttons. They're trying to get you in trouble. They're trying to do this and that. The best thing you can do to overcome an enemy isn't any kind of violent thought, word, or speech. It's just to be good to them. When you're good to somebody that is an enemy, at best, they'll kind of get sick of you and walk away and leave you alone. And at worst, they'll call you a hypocrite that, oh, you're trying to be spiritual or whatever else. But literally, anybody that gives you a rough time, if you do good for them, in the best case scenario, they will have a change of heart. My master told us that an enemy today can become your friend tomorrow. And a friend today can become your enemy tomorrow. So it can go both ways. But if we're always doing good to people, we're more likely to have more friends than enemies. Anybody places a curse on you, bless them. Pray for their well being. If somebody abuses you, it's usually because they have suffered in some way themselves. And by abuse, that could be people that are just difficult to you at work, or it could be, I pray not, but it could be physical abuse. But anybody that abuses somebody else in any way is somebody that is suffering internally. So pray for them, distance yourself from them. This also does not mean to not involve the law where it's needed, to not get into legal discussions if it's needed, but it's an internal attitude in many cases. So if somebody's beating you up, you don't want to stay and be their punching bag. You want to get out of there, but at the same time, you want to bless them and pray for their well being, for their growth. And this is good for the purification of your heart and for theirs. The word for love in this verse, as we've already discussed, is Hesed. Hesed means covenantal love. Covenantal love is to show respect and mercy for those who are in some way harmful. This does not mean to not call for consequences legally or to be an emotional or physical doormat. It simply means that we treat them fairly. And the main crux of it, the deepest part of it, is that in your heart, you're not seeking revenge. So you might seek lawful ways of resolving the issue, but in your heart, you're seeking a fair, merciful, respectful way of handling that difficult situation. You're not trying to take it a step further. You're not trying to be vengeful or hurtful back. The most thing is that you're coming from a spiritual space and that you're trying to create the best possible outcome for everybody. That's what it means to act with covenantal love towards your enemies, to act towards covenantal love to the difficult people in our life that push our buttons. And again, emphasizing the love described here is not an emotional sentiment. It's not agape. It's not love, like I love you. I love you intimately as my friend or as my husband or as my wife. It's not a sentimental kind of love. It's not mushy. It's not gushy. It's a very much about respect. And that's why I have this icon or this meme on the screen. Give respect, get respect. Of course, this doesn't always happen. We know it's the real world, but we should do things without expecting a result. We should do things because it's the right thing to do. That is how you become a perfected being. That's how you become a sadi, perfect one. So and if we give respect, we're more likely to get respect from the world. Of course, this won't always happen, but it's a likely outcome if we try. So again, how do you show covenantal love? Hesed. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. And everything do to others as you would have them do to you. For this is the law and the prophets. So this is talking about covenantal love. This is how you show covenantal love. It's the so-called golden rule, and there's a golden rule in most spiritual paths and religions out there. So in everything you do to others, in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. So if you want to be treated a certain way, then exhibit that behavior always. Put that energy out there, and that energy may or may not come back to you. And again, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a big optimist, but the world is a very strange place, right? Sometimes you do good for others and you get nothing back, or you get a harmful response. But we must set the right example. If we are disciples of Mar Yeshua or any great master, then you need to be the epitome, the embodiment of the teachings. So in every situation, you do to others how you want to be treated, which is with respect, impersonal love or covenantal love, and that sets an example for the world. Most human beings, when you treat them well, they will treat you well back, or at least neutrally. They may even look at you with a suspicious eye. My spiritual master has hugged millions of people all around the world, has given charity, and some people will proclaim her as God, and other people will say, oh, she must be a charlatan, you know. And I could tell you she's not a charlatan. She's an amazing saint. But there will always be doubters and people that think that great spiritual principles are just myths. They're not possible to fulfill. It's not possible to love your enemies. It's not possible to do to others as you would like them to do for you because this world is just broken. Well, that kind of attitude isn't going to change anything. The world is broken. How we fix it or put it in the right direction is by enacting on these universal spiritual principles that Mar Yeshua was talking about. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets. So this is the covenant. The law, Torah, was made with a covenant with God. The Jewish people made a covenant with God that they would follow the law and that they would listen to the prophets, because God would try to renew the covenant through various prophets through all ages, including Mar Yeshua himself, who self-identified as a prophet, and he felt he was renewing the Jewish covenant with the people. He wasn't trying to create a new religion. He was trying to renew the covenant with not only his people, but with all of humanity, in my opinion. The reason for covenantal love. Well, why? Why do I need to do this? Of course, this will only make sense to spiritual people that believe in a higher power, but there is a reason. There is a purpose for this. It's not just high philosophy or having a good heart, even though those things are nice. There's actually a reason why we do this, why we treat people the way we would like to be treated, why we treat people that are difficult with us with respect, mercy, kindness, without revenge, without vengefulness, or wanting to one up that person. If they hurt me, I'm going to hurt them 5 times as much. That's the attitude that some people have. I had a WhatsApp message come from some random person. I assume they found my phone number on Facebook, and anybody's welcome to send me messages or questions. I welcome it. But this person that I don't believe I've ever met sent me a message and said this person really hurt me. And they described this very minimal situation of how this person had hurt them. And they said, I need you to pray to God for me that God kills this person, wipes them off the face of the planet. That is the polar opposite of have covenantal love for your enemy. God never wants us to hurt people in thought, word, or deed. As much as possible, when people hurt us, even our thoughts should be in the mode of praying for their evolution, praying that they go beyond their personal suffering, praying that they grow spiritually so that they can have a more open heart and evolve into a higher being. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 through 48, we find the reason for covenantal love. Mar Yeshua says, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So in these verses, the word love should be changed to have covenantal love for your enemies, or have Hesed for your enemies. So Jesus is telling us what this does. He's explaining to us that as disciples of Mar Yeshua, our goal is to express imitatio Dei. We are meant to imitate God. Not that we could become God, but we can imitate the way God is. How do we do that? He explains it quite clearly. Your Father in heaven makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. So essentially, God is giving life to everybody, regardless of whether they are good or bad. He's acting impersonally. He has an impersonal love for all of humanity, is what's being described here. Even if that humanity doesn't believe in God, or maybe is against God, or maybe doesn't follow the principles of the Bible or the whatever. God is always not leaning in one direction or the other. He fairly gives love to everybody. Mercifully, he gives love and life to everybody. So that is a covenant that he made, because according to the Hebrew Testament, after the flood, Noah offered a sacrifice, and the incense, the smoke from the offering went up to God, which pleased God. And God said, I will never again harm the earth or humanity for the transgressions of humanity, for humanity doing bad things, blah, blah, blah. So since then, God has taken a middle stance, a fair stance. And if people come to him, that's okay. And if they don't, it's okay. It's all part of our spiritual evolution. And I don't believe that there is an eternal hell. So I don't believe that the bad people go to hell forever. I do believe there are spiritual realities where we purify ourselves, and then we could evolve from there. But basically, God doesn't lose anything by us not approaching God. God doesn't lose anything by us not following the rules, so to speak. The only one that loses is the person not trying to grow spiritually. But God will wait. God can wait a whole eternity for a soul to decide to do the right thing. But in the meantime, God will do his or her job. He will provide life and impersonal love to everybody regardless. So that's what Jesus is saying. That's the imitatio Dei, that we ourselves should act that same way. Whether people treat us right or wrong, we should impersonally love that person's soul. We should pray for them. We should help them. We should do good to them. And of course, if it's a violent situation or a very bad situation, this should all be done at a distance. We shouldn't enable that aggressor to be aggressive, but we should be fair and not vengeful. Jesus says a very powerful point here. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? In other words, how does this make your heart grow? How does it make your mind more expansive? How does it make you more tolerant? How does it let you practice shalach, spiritual release? If you just love people that love you, if you just support people that support you, there's no expansion of your sense of selflessness, which is needed to become perfect. So if you have covenantal love only for those who have covenantal love for you, what reward do you have? That takes it even deeper. If you're only respectful of your neighbors because they're respectful of you, what's the good in that? As a spiritual being that's evolving towards perfection, you are the example for the world. You are the light of the world. Go out there and show people how it's done. And it's not like being a Pharisee. It's just by being silent, by living joyfully, by living kindly, by doing compassionate actions where necessary. And by doing this, we become perfected. It's not that any one of us will ever be perfect, that we won't make mistakes in thought, word, or deed, but we are perfecting ourselves. That's how they use the term. You're becoming perfect. Be perfect. Be Tom as your Abba is Tom. So this whole process is for purification of the spiritual heart. It's the whole message that Jesus has for us. The first step in the path is that in all things, we try and open our heart a little bit wider. We try to break down more barriers. We try to become more tolerant. We try to be more forgiving in the sense of releasing people of their debts to us. We do our best to be the best example for the world as we can. Like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And that's how you perfect yourself, and that's how you help to perfect humanity. And whenever you fully purify your heart, that's when we become an individual Baranash, part of the heavenly Baranash. So this is the way. This is one of the spiritual practices that Mar Yeshua wants us to practice, so that we can become spiritually regenerated, so we become spiritually rebirthed. To be born again doesn't happen when you're baptized. Many people believe that. Baptism was only a beginner's initiation, saying, I want to step onto this path. I want to start following Mar Yeshua. I want to follow the divine will and way. I want to make a return to God. That's what baptism meant. It did not mean that you were spiritually reborn. To be reborn is to be reborn from the old Adam of selfishness and negativities into the new humanity, or the second Adam, which is the Baranash, the communion of saints. And whenever we have that experience, we'll know it. You'll know it because you'll be able to easily subvert anger, jealousy, greed, lust, all these things that hold humanity in their octopus grip. You won't have any attachment to anything but God. As Saint Teresa of Avila said, God alone. When truly your life is God alone, in the highest sense of that, not just philosophically, not just saying it in church or to your church friends, but when you live that as your every reality, as you have covenantal love for every single living being on this planet, including animals and plants and trees, only then are you perfect. Only then are you Tom. Only then will you become part of the whole Baranash, Son of Mankind, corporate Messiah, the Babylonian Messiah that the Master Jesus preached. If you're interested in learning more about the type of tradition that I've taught from, that I've learned from, you might be interested in purchasing this book, The Pre-Christian Teachings of Yeshua, written by Dr. Louis Kaiser. It's an excellent resource for all people wanting to understand the historical meanings of the words. For example, in today's lesson, love your enemies means nothing like what most people think it means. So in many cases, all the historical sayings of Jesus are in this book, and he rolls back the English words to the Aramaic or Hebrew understanding. And it's extremely enlightening. So go get this book. It's a few bucks on Amazon. Let's conclude with the second cup of blessing. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother of the universe, please help all of us to treat others fairly and with respect, with mercy and compassion. May you help us to have Hesed, Covenantal love, even for the people that are most difficult in our lives. And may all those people that are dealing with truly difficult violent situations, domestic violence, abuse, wars, like the aggression of Russia and Ukraine, these are the most difficult times to practice covenantal love. May they have your comfort and your guidance from within, so that they can move through these difficult times with spiritual understanding. May all suffering cease to be, and may pure impersonal love exist between all beings in your creation. Respect and Hesed. Amen, Amen, Amen. Good Shabbat, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you next Friday. Thank you.